Goa. So the last time I was here, I have to start with this story. There was a lovely, very, very talented actor here on stage, and he said something which struck a chord inside me. Because I was already scheduled for this. He said, once you're invited to speak at MOG, you are acknowledged as a Goa sort of resident. And I said, wow, now that is something really important to me because, over the last couple of years, I've completely fallen in love with Goa, as I'm sure all of you are too. Some from some more number of years and some from a lesser number of years. But yeah, so for me, this is already like a passport stamp to say, okay, now you are at least a part of the Goa community in some way.
You're knighted ago.
Knighted. Yeah, when Dr. Kerkar says so, well, we got to believe him. So it's an honor for me to be at MOG today for a bunch of different reasons, and this is a wonderful conversation opportunity for me because lots of the people in audience I already know, and some of the rest I hope to know before we quit from here this afternoon. So I have to say this, before we start with the conversation, I don't want to talk about technicals of mountaineering. This is not a mountaineering club sort of talk. So we'll use the Everest as a context of relating to something which is intimidating, which seems so out of reach, which seems so threatening you with your very physical existence. And when people ask me, like, how has it changed you and does it do something to you as a person, etc., etc. So this is about being comfortable with extreme risk. And in many ways, life is about essentially handling risk. And I'm a business person, so business life, everything is about risk management and more importantly, your attitude towards risk, which doesn't mean that we have a chest thumping attitude to say, aa jao, dekh lenge. It's not like that. It's a lot more methodical. Large missions need, a lot more nimbleness and humbleness. And we'll talk about those things. And we'll use Everest as the context, and it's a visually entertaining journey. Sometimes I do tend to stretch because I'm not talking from a script, it's not timed, it just depends on what we are doing. So let's start with the slideshow, and at the end of it I'll share the 7 lessons which has now been converted into a management training program by a consulting company. Large corporations are actually using it. I have been thrilled to see posters of the 7 lessons in conference rooms in pharma companies like Unilever, DHL, so all kinds of tire companies, MG Motors. So it's this book, because of the book, firstly, it was right before COVID that I climbed in 2019. So I had the time to actually write a book, and because we were all at home, and then you need the purpose to write the book. The purpose was never going to be to make money because commercial publishing is a completely different story. So then the purpose became to raise money for a cause, which I've been connected with because I'm in the rug business. So, child labor and all of those things have a legacy in the mind is not a reality anymore, to be honest, but, it's in the minds of especially international community. So that became the cause. And then in my very first talks like this on a Facebook community called the Himalayan Club, which has about 1 million members, doing a live session, somebody approached me to say, can I use your material? Can you help us to build a training program? I said, yeah, that sounds awesome. So it's a small consulting company based out of Gujarat, and they've really taken it to various places, and it makes a huge difference to me. So I'm mentioning this because I want everybody to connect the whole conversation to any challenge that you think you are facing or you've taken it upon yourself. This could be a class 12 student dealing with board exams. This could be a parent, handling essentially the largest project in anybody's life to raise a child. Or this could be an entrepreneur, this could be a housewife, this could be anybody, right from somebody who understands, what's the meaning of a goal or a challenge, like a 8 or a 9-year-old child, to, whatever age, our challenges never get over. So if you will keep connecting it to whatever you feel, you will be able to enjoy and assimilate the ideas which can also be of use to you besides, having you entertained for an hour. So this is the title of the book, this is the cover of the book. This photograph is actually from about 2 hours before you reach the summit. It's a place called the South Summit. And you can see the line of people trying to reach to the top. The very top is not visible in this particular photograph, but we'll show it to you soon. These are just, the airport was under maintenance and we didn't have time to wait, so we just hired a chopper from Kathmandu to fly to Lukla. And as we were landing in Kathmandu, we saw this air crash happening right in front of I was sitting next to the pilot, and this plane was trying to take off, and it just veered off the runway, and 4 people died, unfortunately, and these were the people who were bystanding there, like police guys, other people, not in the plane. So, it was a start in that sense where you get introduced to the idea of the fragility of your very life itself, even before you get started. We'll quickly run through the base camp. I am sure quite a few have thought of or been to base camp. It's too dark for me to see, so I don't know how many of you have been there, but some people said that they have been. So Namche Bazaar is an important stop on that base camp trek. These are just some views on the way. This is actually the summit at around 11 o'clock. Position on the slide is Mount Everest. This is the main transportation for goods, not for people. These are yaks taking stuff to base camp actually. The Mount Everest expedition is about 2 months long. So we get there beginning of April, and the teams, the Sherpas and the organizers already get there end of February, beginning of March, because it's a logistical, I wouldn't call it a challenge, because they know it now what to do, but it's a lot of work that goes on to it. Right from oxygen tanks to supplies for that much time, to be sure that, if there is a weather breakdown or something, which happens all the time. So there is a lot of logistics and organization that goes behind an expedition like climbing the Everest. And the reason it takes 2 months is not because you're climbing every day constantly in one direction, but there is a lot of things which is called rotations. Those rotations are essentially for acclimatization. So you go up from base camp to camp 1, back to base camp, then you sort of walk around 2-3 days, then you go the next time, you go camp 1, camp 2, then back to base camp. So you have to do these things. Takes a while. This is the first part of the expedition actually. There is a big religious ceremony. Lamas come in, and it's a couple of hours of a serious Tibetan puja ceremony. The Sherpas obviously regard Mount Everest as holy, and it is like apologizing to the mountain to say that we'll be stepping on you, and obviously praying for safe passage. It's a solemn ceremony, and at the end of it, the fun part is that the prasad is actually alcohol. So suddenly everyone is having alcohol, so they're like whiskey bottles and beer bottles on the puja ceremony. I had first attempted to climb Everest in 2014, and in that year, so the climbing doesn't start before the puja happens, and the puja happens on the same day for everyone. So that year, the first night of the climb itself, after the puja, only the Sherpas are going up to set up camp 1, etc. That night, there was an avalanche tragedy on Khumbu Ice Fall, and 16 Sherpas died. They got killed on the very first night of the expedition, and after that, there was a lot of commotion there. So essentially, the Sherpas went on strike, and we were there for 28 days, but we had to come back because the climbing season was essentially called off. And the whole day we saw bodies being retrieved from the Khumbu Ice Fall on a rope hanging from a chopper. It was quite a sight to see, the avalanche happened about 6:45 in the morning. So from 9:30, the body retrieval process already started. And it is a solemn reminder of what you are dealing with here. And it is not so much to do with your capabilities or your fitness or whatever else. It's really you're at the mercy of the mountain. And that is a very important thing to remember, especially when people say, oh, you conquered Mount Everest, etc. I say, you can't conquer a little hill on the side of Goa. Forget about conquering. Is the mountain that lets you climb. And you literally are nothing in front of the mountain. And those people who go with that whole conquering mindset are going to be having a very, very rude shock, over the next couple of weeks. So these are just some images from, beautiful images from the base camp. The sun and the wind creates these ice sculptures, and it's quite a sight. And this is actually, so the base camp is actually like a village, about a kilometer long, a 1.2 kilometer long in length along the moraine of the glacier. So this village has about 600 tents during the climbing season. So the trekkers to the base camp are supposed to stop at a point which is before the actual campsite. So people who are doing just the ABC trek are not supposed to go to all the way to where the actual camp is. Only another maybe 200 meters, but that's the site. So this is like a small village with a population of about 600 to 800 people. for those 7 weeks when the spring expedition actually runs every year, from the beginning of April till about the end of May, first beginning of June. And it is quite a community by itself. Every night is at least minus 25 or lower. So when the sun goes up, goes down behind the mountains, or before it comes up over the mountains, it's freezing, freezing cold. So living that life for 6-7 weeks at a stretch itself is quite something to deal with. And when people say, do you have the experience? Are you going to do the experience, etc., has got more to do with just enduring that life for that many number of days at a stretch. Sleeping in a nylon tent, minus 25 to minus 40 temperatures every day demands some sort of passion around the idea. It's not something which you can do just casually to go have fun. Then they do some trainings and then some practice sessions. The Sherpas also want to know what the crew actually is, their skill sets and their fitness levels. So these are just some training. This is a gorgeous photograph that I took from one of the day hikes in the area. It gives a very good impression of what the climb is all about. So if you look at about 7-8 o'clock position on the slide, you will see these very small yellow specks. So this thing is actually the base camp. Okay, you see these little yellow specks, these are the tents. So I have taken this from the base of Mount Pomori, which is to the west of Everest. So we just do these day hikes while we are, sort of resting. And resting doesn't mean sleeping inside your sleeping bag. It means you just go for day hikes, climb 1,000 feet, come back to base camp, and climb another 1,500 feet, come back to base camp the next day. So it's a gorgeous view. And this tongue of ice, which is going up towards the Everest, is about 7 kilometers long. The first part of this is Khumbu Ice Fall. And this goes down the glacier right up to, sort of Lobuche and Gorakshep, which is a beautiful last camping site when you're doing the ABC trek. And the first part, which I'll show you close-ups of, is also the most treacherous part of the climb itself. So in many senses, it's like baptism by fire, because you're coming over the ABC trek, which is basically a party. Like, it's broad paths, easy food, easy to sleep. You have rooms, you have bedding, you can order pizzas and burgers all the way up to base camp. And then all of a sudden, it's like a complete switch to serious mountaineering. There is no gentle transformation to from one to the other. So this is how it begins. Typically, we leave base camp at night between 1 and 3 a.m. because at night time, it is the most stable. The cold temperatures help to reduce the risk of avalanches. And also it's less windy at night, and your idea is to be done with before the sun is really out and strong. Before 11ish, you should be kind of back to camp or wherever you were staying the day. During the day, because of the strong sun, the risk of avalanches is very much elevated. And to haul yourself up to this, through this ice fall, which is essentially a river of ice boulders size of an apartment. And they're moving, and you can hear the sounds of it, like the grumbles and the groans of, right under your feet. And some wonderful descriptions have been made in some beautifully written books on Everest, and one of the most important ones is called Into Thin Air. It has also been made into a movie. I would highly recommend people to, watch that movie if they can. So we essentially leave at night, and this is 1.4 kilometers only up to Camp 1. So Camp 1 is about 20,000 feet altitude, and base camp is about 17.5, 1.4K. And if you can do that in about 10 hours, that's considered to be like a good job done. And it's like a qualification stamp to say, yeah, you might make it. And some people take between 14 and 16 hours also, and yeah, some good guys can do it in 8. The Sherpas can possibly do it in 6 or faster. I mean, some of the exceptional Sherpas. But ordinary folks like me should be happy to do this in about 10 hours, and I was able to make that time. In general, I'm very, very slow on moving on the mountain, but I don't stop. I just keep going. I don't sit down. I can walk for sort of, many hours without stopping, but I don't go fast. So this is a very important first part of the climb. And in fact, the first time people reach Camp 1 over the Khumbu Ice Fall and they come back, about 15% of the people actually quit the expedition. And therein lies already the first lesson from the 7, that I felt that there has to be passion plus preparation. That lesson is called passion plus preparation is equal to performance. So you need both. You can't be just, if you're prepared but not passionate, so when the difficulties show up, then you tend to sort of give up pretty easily. And you probably not will be prepared to the degree that you need to prepare. And solid preparation in our minds actually gives us the confidence to be optimistic, like genuinely optimistic about a challenge. It's not about fake. You can't fake it. I completely throw out this notion about fake it till you make it, etc. I don't think that works in real life. At least not when you're dealing with serious stuff. You should know what you're dealing with, and you should be very, very clear about it and passionate about it. So you can see that, as I told you, people have prepared for years. They've paid $50,000 to this expensive trip. Mount Everest is like the intersection of 3 serious lines. First of all, you need to have a life which will allow you to first prepare and then take away 2 months being practically out of communication. Then be prepared to die for this, and then be prepared to spend 50, 60,000 US dollars on basically a trip over a mountain. In spite of that, about 15% people leave after their first visit over the Khumbu ice fall just to Camp 1 and back. And they say this is not going to be something which we want to deal with. And you can see why. I mean, these are just some of the pictures. And mind you, all the pictures that I have taken are in the spots where it was even possible to take a photograph, because your first priority is obviously to avoid getting killed. So therefore, in a spot that you can actually take out everything beyond base camp is only phone photography. I was not qualified enough to carry this serious, although I can handle good camera equipment, but I was not doing that on the Everest after base camp. So these are pictures where you can actually pull out a phone, take off your mitten, take a picture, put your glove back, put your phone back, and then start climbing again. So most of the very treacherous parts, actually there are no photographs, because you would rather make sure that you cross it than photograph it. So unfortunately, we'll not be playing some videos. I have videos which I'll share later. So there are horizontal and vertical ladder climbs, which are a lot more complicated than they seem here, because this is about 18, 19,000 feet of altitude. And those of you who've trekked and who've done typically 15, 16, 17,000, you know already how complicated it gets at that altitude. And here we're talking about 19,000. So it takes a while, and these kind of passages are also the main reason for what you see as lines and traffic jam ho gaya Everest mein, all of those kind of stories, because this takes a while, right? So people are kind of queuing up, and not everybody is moving at the same speed. And there's no alternate, you can't bypass, you have to wait. It's like everything is like traffic on a bridge. So if one person is slow or scared or sick or whatever, so it just backs up. And that is also very dangerous, because sometimes you can be stuck in the middle of the Khumbu ice fall in a delicate ice zone, and there are like 100 people standing there, which itself can cause a crumble of the ice, and you don't know. There is no safe spot to wait, but that's what you sign up for when you do this. And if you see any of your own challenges, any of your own goals, there are these parts, whether we recognize them, acknowledge them or not, but there are always these parts which do carry a significant degree of risk. So this is actually a video, but we'll not play it now. These are the horizontal ladders. They go over the crevices. And here I can mention to you another, I'll share the video later, but the other lesson, which I called the power of focus. And everybody knows about focus, right from class 2, everybody, focus, we all know focus. But when it's a matter of life and death, then how powerful it can be is most evident when you're dealing with something like Mount Everest, because when you're going over these ladders and you look down and you're looking at the crevice, and you basically are aiming to step only at the little aluminum thing which is about 12 inches wide. The only way you can cross it is that you will be so sharply focused that you have to see only where you can actually step. If you look at the left or the right and you get a little wobbly, and the ladder is already wobbly, you can see videos of ladders actually coming off, because it's on ice on both sides. Sometimes it's melted and you don't know what's going to happen. So that ability to focus so sharply on where you need to step and kind of blind out the rest of it is a key skill is a key skill in being able to maintain your mental balance, maintain your fortitude, maintain your determination to keep going, because it's not, again, as I said, you can't fake it. If you are constantly under attack by the mountain, mostly because you are not sort of, using the right perspective on it, or using some very small skills which are small when you use it, but if you don't use it, then they can be disastrous. So crossing these ladders and many other paths, many other places, there is barely, like you can't be standing on 2 feet, right? So you're standing either like this or like this. And you have also sometimes people coming from the other side within that path. So what are you doing? And you have a rope and you have the carabiner. So basically you are unlatching yourself from one carabiner, you're holding this guy here, you're putting your foot like this around him, and he's going this way, you're going that way, and this is like a whole. So if you're going to be not sharply focused on where it is safe enough to step, and you stop looking at the rest of it, it will be very difficult for you to actually deal with it. And some of the people who actually quit is, I think, because of that, because you're constantly looking at what can go wrong. It's a very important lesson for me. Yes, there is stuff that can go wrong and it's not supposed to be ignored. We'll talk about it very soon. But the idea is to acknowledge its presence, and I know it's there and I know how to deal with it. It's not about dekh lenge, kuch nahi hoga. It's not about these stupid ideas of, a sort of grand courage or something. That's all bullshit. That confidence has to come from the ability to dissect so precisely, this is the risk, this is the safe zone, and I know how to keep myself in the safe zone. And that's what it is. It's not about some, bravado here. So this is what the Khumbu Ice Fall looks like. You can see a little ladder right in the middle of the slide, the aluminium ladder. So these things can, they are quite treacherous actually, because they wobble, they're just on ice, they're sort of loose ladders out there. I mean, they're tied to a rope, it's not loose, but they're not fixed either, So I'll give you 5 seconds to read the text. This is some text from the book or my commentary on the slides. The book is essentially a photo essay on the climb, right? So if you've seen these movies like The Vertical Limit or this one, you actually have these shots where the ladders actually come off and this guy is dangling in the middle of the crevice and somebody's trying to rescue them over the chopper and then eventually falls into the crevice. And so obviously in the movies they make it a lot more dramatic. In life it takes much shorter time to actually just go into the crevice and never come back. There's not so much drama happening. So it is about the sharp focus, because when you look at it, and you will see in the video, you can see. So the videos were done through a camera which was tied to my wrist. So if I'm using my hand like this, so the camera actually looks into the crevice, and then your foot is going right across it. And you're like, Aditya, what were you trying to do? You have a wife, you have children, you have a business. I said, yeah, that's why I have to do these things. So, so this is Camp 1, a beautiful, beautiful camp. It's not as benign as it looks because it's littered with crevices. And the first rule is that you can't be wandering around enjoying the scenery or something like that. It is something you can only step where you already see a footprint. And it's a primary rule to be always sort of going around with a bunch of people, like 2-3 people, because otherwise somebody falls into a crevice and nobody even knows that somebody disappeared. So even if you are, sort of attending to your nature's call or whatever, it's still, privacy is not the most important concern out there. It's safety, physical safety and mental strength. So it's a beautiful camp. So from base camp, you actually can't see Mount Everest. The first sight of Mount Everest, up close and personal, is from this camp, Camp 1. I'll show you the picture. So this one on the left is actually, the black massif is base camp. This is me sitting at base camp. So what had happened, I missed telling you a story. So the night that we were climbing through the Khumbu Ice Fall the first time, my left foot went through the ice all of a sudden and it was all into the water below. So I was like on the floor like this, and this whole foot had gone into the ice and soaked into this ice cold water, temperature minus 25, and water has gone all into the boot, and because boots are like up to here, which is where that other lesson, which we'll talk about later, but that lesson is called expect to deal with the unexpected. And a lot of these things happened. I ran out of oxygen, my guide left, and these kind of things will happen in every mission. Whether you're running a business, whether you're raising a child, whether you're handling a relationship, whether you're handling an exam, whatever. So unexpected things which seem like they're a disaster. Because after that time that when my leg went into the water, I had to actually turn around, get separated from my group, go back to base camp. Because it was the middle of the ice fall, I couldn't have just carried on. And a massive risk of frostbite, because essentially the frostbites are a burn from latent heat. So water freezes around your skin, and the latent heat it gives away while it becomes ice is what actually gives you the burn. So if your foot is actually soaked in water, sometimes it can happen just through sweat. Fortunately, personally, I don't sweat so much in the hands and feet. But if your foot is soaked in water and you are going to be in the middle of the night at Kumbu Ice Fall, chances are very, very bright that something dramatic can happen. So I had to keep going. I came back to base camp, dried up the whole thing the next day in the sun, and then went back early. That's why I'm alone here, because I already got separated. So I went again the next day with my Sherpa only. This is my Sherpa. Everybody has a personal Sherpa on the Everest, which is also a part of the reason why it's so expensive. And these are not your hill station Sherpas, a couple of thousand rupees a day. This is $10,000, $8,000 for the trip, for the Sherpa alone. And so this is a lovely shot, and right after this was an avalanche. I have a video of the avalanche. We're just waiting here. We just got there. We just had some lunch, and an avalanche was hurtling down the face of this mountain. And for a moment, it seemed like it was just coming into camp. But I think it decided to take a left, and I'm still here to tell you the story. I'll share the video of that avalanche with you. This is a beautiful sunset shot at Camp 1, and I have a shot of the same view the next day, and it is completely clear and all the mountains can be seen. This is actually a fabulous video where you see traversing through a path which is a couple of inches wide, and the crevasse is right along with your foot. Like literally, you're putting your foot here, and this is 100 meters. And that's where I said the focus idea around any goal where you are eye to eye with the most sort of scary risk around it, and you still have to keep going and keep going. And the more you can focus on where you can put your foot, actually there is enough room. If you think about it, there is room. Okay, it's 6 inches, but how wide is my foot? It's not wider than 6 inches. So 6 inches is actually enough if you stop looking into the crevasse and stop, wobbling around with your. So there is enough room in the most treacherous positions. There is always, always, always a spot which will let you pass. And I am absolutely, incorrigibly optimistic to the extent that, no matter what the position is, no matter how difficult it looks, no matter how about to die you are, there still will be a spot that you can actually pass through. And that ability and that tendency to be able to constantly do that, it goes a long way in dealing with these kind of issues. This is Camp 2, 21,000 feet. This is like the advanced base camp on Everest. So Camp 2 is a safe camp. Like Camp 1, I told you, is a very treacherous camp, crevasses everywhere, you can't walk around, you can't do anything. This one is actually on sort of a rock fall area. So it's not on ice and water, it's on rocks. This is also the place, this is the last place where you actually have warm food, you have a kitchen tent, you have oxygen tanks, you have like your stuff for the onward journey is stored here after base camp. After this is just 2 more camps, Camp 3 and Camp 4, and then summit. This one here, look at about 3 o'clock position in this slide. That's Camp 2 actually. You can barely see it because it's kind of not dark enough in the auditorium. So you walk through a gentle slope up to this wall. This wall is called the, give me a second, the Lhotse face. It's called the Lhotse face. So the Lhotse is the 4th highest mountain in the world, 8,600 meters, neighbor of Mount Everest. And this is about 1,200 feet, nearly vertical ice wall, blue ice. Blue ice is the hardest ice where even your crampons don't actually go in, so you have to kick to let the crampon actually settle into the ice, and that drains a lot of energy. It's an extremely demanding, and you've already been going over a month in that altitude with that oxygen concentration, very little. You can't really eat or sleep much as such. Especially after this point, it's become very, because there is anxiety, there is altitude, there are all kinds of things. So this is also another filter, which is like the second filter, I would say, after the Khumbu ice fall, because by the time you climb up this wall, and after this there isn't any more rest actually, because you rest here a couple of hours and you barely sleep at the night, and then the next day you reach camp 4 and then you rest a couple of hours, and then the same afternoon you go to the summit. So from this point on, once you are at camp 3, to the summit and back in the next 72 odd hours, you're probably resting maybe 10 hours with all that's going on in your body and in your mind. So once you reach camp 3, there is again a sort of set of people who would like to not carry forward, and it's that sort of second filter of people's mental, what I call tenacity of purpose. Because this is the time where you really have to be very clear, like what are you signing up for and why do you want to do this? And mostly there is not a very rational answer. And I think if we really look into the heart of hearts of all our own private Mount Everest, you can probably do without it. It's usually not so necessary. And those are the goals that actually drive you the most. Like our Dr. Kerkar here is building a museum, they're building, I don't know, every time I meet him, there's like 3,000 other things he's doing. And like, why? That's because who he is. Like, people are like, why did you have to go to bloody Mount Everest? I said, well, the most legendary answer from the famous mountain is because it's there. But, so this is the second wall, and it really, by the time you reach camp 3, you are a dead body, practically. From this point on, it's entirely your top floor. And this was another important lesson for me. So when you get to base camp, I have to tell you this, guys. So when you get to base camp in the beginning, so the village is getting formed, you're meeting new people, and many of them are these solid marathon runners, bodybuilders. They look like, you look like a chicken in front of them. You're like, boss, we have no chance. Look at these people, look at who we are. And you know what? A lot of those people don't make it. A lot of those people, those very people, because what I observed was that when you were in this, especially around this part, and you're getting it very, very difficult, and the mountain is not really distinguishing between who you are, what you are, So when the mountain slaps you across your face, and then these people who have been thumping their chest and have been acting like, this is a cakewalk or something, they almost can't deal with the embarrassment of not being able to handle this. So then they become a little bit of an excuse, or the Sherpa is not good, this was not good, the food is not good, whatever, we're going back. Or we have a stomach problem and we're going back, etc., etc. So yes, people do quit at that stage. And people like me who were expecting to be thrown around, who were expecting to have a very difficult time going up, actually make it, because we already knew we were going to get screwed. But we'll keep on doing it. We were 4 of us in our group only, and there was one young girl from Haryana. She was the daughter of a police officer. I told you about Khumbu ice fall and how much time she took 16 hours to go over the Khumbu ice fall. And everybody was writing her off, like, Manisha, what are you doing? And she was like, a kid. She was 24 years old, but she made it to the summit, and I made it. And the 2 others were ultra marathon runners. They didn't. These people who can run 100-mile races, they didn't. And I can barely run 10 kilometers. So it was that lesson about humility and about resilience. Resilience is the key word here, really. That if somebody has to say one word, what is the one word? It's not anything else except resilience, because no matter what you're doing, no matter what goal you're pursuing, there will be events, phases, things that will happen which will make it sound like it's over. But it really isn't. If you can just get up one more time, then you fall. And that is, I think, the most important, single most important key issue is resilience. This is how Camp 3 looks like. It's on the vertical, it's like on a very high gradient slope. Ice, so you have to dig, the Sherpas have to do the hard job of digging ice blocks over and somehow perching a tent in there. It's a very treacherous camp. Even when you go to pee, you have to be roped in, because if you fall off that thing, there is no way, anybody or anything can stop you. So if somebody wants to quickly read these things, if we stop for reading, it will become even more long, the conversation. This is actually a video also from Camp 3, which just took. So this whole thing that you see, it's like the river of ice going into, which becomes the Khumbu ice fall later on. It's called the Western Coombe. And this then goes into a feature called the yellow band, which I'll show you just now. It's a rock face. So suddenly you are dealing with ice, and then there are these patches of rocks, and your boots have crampons. And there is no opportunity to take off your crampons and then, put them back again when there is ice. You just go over these rocks while still having crampons on your boots. So that time you really have to hold the rope very, very tightly, because, it skids. And this whole temperatures inside the Western Coombe can actually rise to a very high degree during the day, because the sun is so strong and the ice is reflecting the sun from all directions. So this is, it can even be like 25, 30 degrees, which then increases the avalanche risk, because that's how, it's kind of melting away. And that's why most of the climbing is actually done at night. So this patch that you see, that yellow rock, this is called the yellow band. And I've done the abridged version of the slide. So this part is a very, very treacherous part to climb. And this is here, already we are approaching Camp 4. And this is in fact the spot where I ran out of oxygen. So we are going over, and we are about 45 minutes from Camp 4. And my Sherpa said, you can come and I'll go and set it up. I said, yeah, it's the rope, you get a little bit of confidence by that time. The one on the left, the very top, is the summit of Mount Everest. This thing flying off the Mount Everest is actually called the plume of Everest. And the plume is an indicator of wind speeds. This is not just the cloud. This is actually snow and ice flying off the face of Everest, which is why it's all black. Why is it so? Why is there no ice there, that altitude, that temperature? Because ice can't just stick. It's so windy most of the time. So this is a great memory and a shot. Right after this, suddenly I felt, why has it become so difficult for me to move? I was moving okay. And then I looked up my pressure gauge, and there's no oxygen in my tank. And so I kept trying to go a little bit, and then this guy said, there were other Sherpa, he said, no, you have to wait, because somebody should get you a tank, because you might feel that you can walk, but you won't be able to. So I actually waited. The Sherpas know each other, so somebody went to Camp 4, somebody brought us. So I was sitting there for about an hour, making some good pictures. So I got lucky with the photography because of oxygen running out. But this is a great shot, and this is a great reminder of what is about to come. This is Camp 4, South Col, 8,000 meters. It's also the start of the official death zone on Mount Everest. So after this, even before this, it's not for human existence, but this point onward, it's really, really treacherous. Sorry. It's a beautiful sunset, and think about it, there are only 14 peaks in the world which are higher than this spot. So this camp is already 8,000 meters. So when there's all these videos and things about 14 peaks, that's 14 peaks, 8,000 meter peaks. And this is the last camp on Mount Everest, 7950 to be precise, but let's say 8,000. Beautiful sunset. All the massive hills that look very big from the base camp, they begin to look like hillocks from here, and you can, identify this one, that one. And I will share a fun anecdote from this camp, because a lot of times this question comes up on these talks or in a personal comment. Like, how were you managing to go to the loo and all? It is minus 35. What were you doing? I said, yeah, if you're thinking about that, I don't think you have cut out for Everest, because that's not the ideas to think about. But I will tell you a personal. So this night that we reached there, typically you reach there in the early afternoon, you rest a couple of hours, and then that same night you have to go up. But that night, in spite of the weather forecast being in our favor, it was an extremely stormy night. So till about 8 o'clock we waited. It was so windy that we felt like all of us, 8 people inside a 4-man tent, and the tent will fly off with all the 8 people. So it was decided that we will not climb tonight, and we will wait it out for one extra night at Camp 4. So you have a 24 hours extra in the so-called death zone. And we were able to do that because we had already, kind of provided for. And let me put in the two lessons here about risk management, and then we'll carry on with the rest of the slide, because I want to give you that context. So if we talk about risk, and we divide risk into two broad parts, known risks and unknown risks. These are the two broadest distinctions one can make. So the known risk part, that lesson I've called make friends with fear. And that essentially means that you acknowledge the dangers and the risks that are real, therefore real, and then you be so prepared for them that it's like friends with fear. Like, you're comfortable with your friends, you want to meet them, you want to sit next to them, you're okay. So you know the risk, but you've prepared for it so well that you're kind of friendly with it. And this was that part where running out of oxygen, getting into frostbites, these kind of things are kind of known risks on Everest. So because for us, we had done our 4-man private expedition, kind of organized privately. So we had 9 oxygen tanks per person provisioned. And the tanks are not, tanks about $500 a tank, but to get a tank to Camp 4 through the extra Sherpas and all, that is a lot of effort and planning and cost. So we had already provided for that. So we had the extra oxygen actually to stay another day here. Because here you're all the time on, and after Camp 3, it's all the time on. Even sleeping, you're on oxygen tank. So if we had not got that, but a lot of people didn't, most people didn't actually. Typically standard is 6 tanks per person. So if you have an extra 24 hours in Camp 4, your expedition is over. Because then, what will you take to the top? So we had these 3 extra tanks. So we were able to stay there. And the other part of the risk, the unknown risks, the unknown unknowns as they call it, that's where I called the lesson, expect to deal with the unexpected. So whether your oxygen ran out or your foot went through the ice, after this night actually our guide left, because he took somebody on this night to the top without telling anybody else. So everybody retired to their tents. The next day in the afternoon, the whole afternoon everybody was in their tents, and the time to leave is actually around 6 p.m. in the evening. You climb through the night. And there's no guide. And like, where the hell did he go? And then everybody said that, through somebody in the group only had given him some inducements, and they wanted to go that night because this guy was not comfortable staying here another extra night, and it was very stormy, and we didn't really believe the story. But anyway, there was no guide. So these kind of things are happening, and that is the part that I call on the risk management side to say, okay, expect to deal with the unexpected in all our major goals and challenges. If we are already kind of prepared that things will go wrong which you can't predict, and therefore you can't be specifically prepared, you can't take specific steps to prepare for things which you don't know what they will be. But if you know that there will always be some things which will be going wrong, and you are expecting those things, so when those things actually happen, then you're not panicking. The worst thing you can do is actually to begin to panic and begin to blame somebody and begin to blame God or your destiny or whatever else. That's just, there's no time for that. And even though this is Everest and your life is on the line, but many a times, even in casual goals, it may not be your life, but it's the goal itself. And in those panic moments, a lot of wrong decisions happen, a lot of giving up happens. A lot that could be avoided happens within those panic moments. So if you are prepared, then something happens, and then you're saying, okay, something has to happen, this is it, let's just deal with it. Focus on what can be done, keep on. So here, we went without the guide. And later on, when I came back and I told my family about this, my wife had tears. I had known that Sherpa for my previous expedition. So that Sherpa, the main guide, was one of the reasons my family is, okay, you can go with, he's called Furba Sherpa. So she was like, why did you even go? I said, you're not going to turn back from Camp 4. Just because anyway, the guy's not carrying you in his arms or something, right? It's all in your mind that there is a guide, but you have to be on your feet, you have to deal with whatever happens on your feet, and there are other people, you can see what's happening. So that part of risk management, which is the unknown unknowns, we divide into that part, the second lesson. So you climb through the night. The first part of the climb, I don't have pictures. We were going 6 hours non-stop to this spot called the balcony. So we left about 6:30 p.m. On the 21st of May from Camp 4. This is the first spot we could actually sit down and, change. The first oxygen tank is changed here. There is, when we leave from Camp 4, there is some food in your pocket essentially, and a thermos flask with hot water. And you take some water, extra water inside your pockets, and so, but that all gets frozen completely very soon. So what you have in the water bottle is actually a block of ice. So this is a beautiful shot that I got that night. It was a clear night. In this one, you can see, if you see the headlamps at the bottom, you'll see how vertical this is. And sometimes I think that it's easier to climb at night because you don't see a lot of the stuff. And the next morning and the next day when you see, oh, this is where we were, but now you're already done, now you have to go back. As they say, going up is optional, coming back is mandatory. So it is a fun thing, and I can relate it to sometimes the goal. It helps to be a little blind to a few things actually, while being conscious, but not always looking at all the things that can possibly go wrong is a good skill to have. So this I call the most difficult to see sunrise nearly from the top of the world. This is the sun rising over the Tibetan plateau, and this is about right before 5 o'clock in the morning, and we are going. So when you're climbing on this face, the fake summit, which is called the South Summit, is all you see, because the other summit is behind it and you're not seeing it, although you're aware of it. It's not that you don't know, but still there is that sort of sense of, it's not that far. And then you reach, these are just some beautiful shots. This is another 8,000 meter peak, Manasalu. This is one of the easier 8,000 meter peaks to climb actually, where people do that for preparation for pre-Everest sometimes. I unfortunately did not try to do that. I thought we'll go for the main one. This is from South Summit. I would give you 15 seconds to read it, because I think what I've written with thinking and rewording it is much more beautiful than I'll just come out with it. So I'll read it out for you. Does not matter if you're totally exhausted, dehydrated, freezing, hypoxic, hungry, or anything worse. You must remain super alert and in top performance mode, or you will pay. You will pay with your life. That's the deal. Take it or it will take you. That's what you sign up for when you sign up for a shot at placing foot on the top of this world. This is pretty much the last hurdle of a patch before you kiss the summit. It reveals itself all of a sudden after the South Summit, and one look at it sends a sharp shiver down your spine before you piece your courage back together and fight on. Look at the people. The path is nothing more than a few inches wide, and you've already been going for about 12 hours through the night. Go for it. Glory awaits, but demands its price. So this is called the cornice climb, and if you look at somewhere in the middle of that, where the slope actually falls down, it's a dark spot, so you can't see too many people. You can't see it clearly, but there is a cluster of people right there. It's called the Hillary Step. This used to be an overhanging rock actually, which was a very difficult patch to negotiate. But after the earthquake of 2014, people say that this, people who've done it before and later, Sherpas, this has become much easier now, because some of those things moved around, and essentially you can, even people like me didn't find it too difficult to handle that. And this cornice is really, really sharp. It's very, very, very treacherous. The mountain on the left is, that black face of the photograph that we saw from Camp 1, basically this is that face on the left. So this is, this is the final, sorry, the title is wrong. I have taken this photograph. This was also the photograph we used on the poster. This is actually, I have already reached the summit, and I'm looking downwards towards the last step. The last steps, fortunately, are not that treacherous. And once you cross the Hillary step, you're kind of sure that now I'm going to make it. So that energy, and this is one thing I would like to share with you here, that on these very long, difficult goals, which are not something which you will decide today and finish the next week, things which take a much longer period, I think that patch between the 40 and 80% of the progress is the most difficult in terms of just the persistence and the tenacity of purpose, as I call it, it demands from you. The first 40%, you're energized, you're enthusiastic, I'll do this, I'll do that. And by the time it's 40, 50% down the line, you are already beginning to feel like a spent force. And the thing is looking like it's so far away, how will I ever make it? And what will happen to this? And so that's the time where you just put your head down and go. That's the other lesson which will come, one step at a time. That's the time to stop thinking about how far, how, when, why not, why am I doing this? I mean, all of those kind of, thoughts which are a friction in your mind against the objective of what you're trying to achieve. Those thoughts are the demons which actually attack you from all directions. And then there are other people who are giving up, somebody is sick, especially on the last day. I mean, people are physically died. 12 people died the year I climbed. And some of them right in front of my eyes. And there are bodies from the past expeditions there. So in any goal, there are enough things that are happening around you and you're seeing, and there is evidence of the stuff that this is an extremely dangerous thing. There's no guarantee, there's no nothing about it. But that's it. I mean, that's why you guys are listening to this whole talk. I mean, why is it so? So there has to be a price to pay. There has to be some sort of, breakdown of the techniques around this. And that technique about one step at a time, the most important phase of that part is between the 40 and 80%. Because once you are at the 80 odd percent, then you are energized again because now you almost made it. So, from that sunrise point onwards, you feel very optimistic that except if something happens like an accident or I fall off the mountain face or something like that. Other than that, I think I'll do it now. So through the night, it's kind of cold and it's a very, very high pressure on your mind. And then this sunrise suddenly energizes you for no rational reason because it hasn't really become any warmer. But it just suddenly feels like, yeah, now we're talking, now we can see, it's not that far. So that once you are able to negotiate the 40 to 80% without evaluating it every minute, I think it is a huge filter that you crossed in terms of just being able to achieve it finally. So this is me on the summit of Mount Everest, friends. And as I said in some of my posts that I made, my goal was to prove to myself what ordinary people like me can do with preparation plus passion. I'm no fitness freak or sportsman, etc. Genuinely ordinary chap and a mountain lover. I made it so that really means, and I genuinely am not trying to be humble or whatever. I genuinely mean this, that anybody can do. And therefore, I want to say this to you that, go for your Everest, friends. Whatever that happens to be, there ain't no mountain too high you cannot reach. So this is that. So we left about 6:30 in the evening from Camp 4, and I was at the summit about 7:30 in the morning. Normally, you're supposed to stay there about 10 minutes, maximum 15 minutes, because the pressure of going back is on your mind. You're very well aware that most of the accident and deaths happen on the way back. And it's weather, it's all those kind of things. And you've done your thing, you've reached there, you've seen it, and after that, it's not a place to hang out. But I did spend about 40 minutes, 35 to 40 minutes based on the first and last timestamp on my photographs. So I did stretch it a little bit out there. This is a beautiful video from the summit, 360-degree views. I'll share the video with Nilankur or whoever else, on the groups. This is a view from the southern view from the summit over the Nepal side. And in my book, I've mentioned the details of every summit that you can see in this photograph. Every name, every altitude of the mountain. I used knowledge from experts too. I am not so knowledgeable, but there are people who are. This is a rare photograph, which is the photograph of Camp 4, the death zone, the final camp. So I'm coming back from Everest. This is the time. That photograph was not here because there was another hold up at a place on the way back. And my Sherpa went to say that, okay, let me go and have a look as to what's happening. And he never came back. He just left. And I have another 6 hours to go, and then there's no more Sherpa also. And I have just that last half bottle of oxygen and a bottle of water. And this guy went to see the blockage, and he just didn't come back. So I was coming back alone the last 6 hours. And this was again expect to deal with the unexpected story. And all of these things emerged in your mind later on. It's not like I was already aware of these lessons. This is what when the whole reel keeps playing in your mind for the next couple of weeks when you were back, that's when I jotted these things down. So you can see two people right at the bottom, 7 o'clock position on the photograph. Gives you a sense of scale. This is a cluster of tents, and this mountain is the Lhotse mountain, fourth highest in the world. So a beautiful picture because typically by this time people are too exhausted to take photographs or the weather is not so clear. So I got lucky. Now we've already been going about 23 hours essentially. So I reached back to Camp 4 at 6:30 p.m. the next evening. So it was 13 hours to the top, 11 hours to climb back. Oh yeah, this is the shot. Sorry, it was just gone. So this is where you can see the traffic jam on the way back. This is my boot and the rope. So the Sherpa went down to see what's happening. So this was actually a drop on the rock face. And as I said, if you see these little metallic claws on the boots, so these are helpful for climbing on ice or coming down on ice, but they are a liability when it's hard rock. And there is no opportunity, as you can see, to try to take them off and put them back again. So you basically just sort of go with them. So that's why there was a hold up. So this is where I lost the Sherpa essentially. And then I didn't put more photographs here. This is me back to Camp 2. So essentially once you're back to Camp 2, then you're kind of back in the safe zone. And from Camp 2, Camp 2 is the highest place where helicopters can actually pull you out. Because anything beyond Camp 2, choppers can't really, they can fly, but they can't land and take off. So any rescues are possible only from Camp 2. So that is also the reason why people die upward, because nobody can actually rescue you unless you can walk it up, or somehow somebody can carry you or drag you, but you can't really drag, it's too treacherous. So this is me and my wife and my daughter. They came to receive me in Kathmandu. So as I got back to Kathmandu, so they were there. My son was still in America, so he couldn't come. And let's take 5 minutes to actually, this is my mom receiving me at home. I have to show you pictures of these people when I was leaving. Their faces look completely different. So we'll just take another 5-7 minutes to revisit the lessons, although I spoke about them, but let's just recap, because this, I think, is the most important takeaway for everyone who's decided to spend your morning with us today. The first lesson, as I said, passion plus preparation. So, it's like, I have to say this, we see people, we are passionate about cricket and we are passionate about football, but they're actually passionate about looking at football on the TV, using something to drink and eat, and that is not passion about football. That's passion about having a good time watching football. Because if you have a passion about football, then you go out in the field, sweat it out, get hurt, all of those things. So you have to be very clear about what your passion really is. Is it the fascination and the fun part of the job, or is it really the sweaty part of the job? And then if you can prepare hard, and without preparation and sacrifice, passion doesn't yield much. So the passion is essentially, what are you willing to lose for it? What are you willing to sacrifice for your passion? That is the proof of what you're passionate about. If you're only willing to sacrifice, something casual, then that's not called passion. That's something else. So it takes both passion, and preparation on mega missions. That was my first lesson. And when we talk about corporates or other things, and when we analyze any goals that are not working out, this is actually 60% of the time, this is already not in place. So almost the rest of it doesn't really matter. This is the second one. As I said, our actions depend on our focus. Both negatives and positives are always present, and where we choose to focus determines on how we act. There are very, very delicate and dangerous phases. We already talked about this. So if our focus is sharp enough, we can kind of deal with it. Yeah, this one I didn't mention earlier. So this is a very important one where he says, scale need not scare you. And again, when we are dealing in the context of audacious, intimidating goals, then obviously the scale of the idea itself cannot be. So it is something which has to be somehow energizing us, somehow helping us to be driven to prepare, be driven to deal with the risk, be driven and not be scared. So that is something which is a very elementary first stage filter. The scale should enthuse you, not deter you. No guts, no glory, obviously. We all know that cliche. One step at a time. This is again a closer shot of that final climb, the cornice climb as it's called. And you can see a little bit better how unwelcoming is this. Mountain, like, what the hell are you doing here? Are you serious? You want to do this? So, and you can see the cluster at the Hillary step. And you can see how it feels and how it looks. And this is not right in the, this is where you already drained out of every energy drop that you had. Expect the unexpected. We talked about it. This is when I'm waiting for the oxygen tank to come back to me, and Everest taught me that unexpected things can happen at any time to do with weather, people or equipment. It can threaten your life or limb, and you can't have a plan B for them because they are unexpected. What lets you overcome such danger is a calm approach to that trouble. Make friends with fear, we talked about it already. There's no such thing as not being scared. So this is again, oh, were you not scared? Of course I was scared. I mean, you have to be scared. What does it mean to not be scared? Either you're lying or you're stupid. You shouldn't be either if you're trying to deal with important goals. So the idea is how do you prepare for it? And this one you don't see it, but there is a very long rope that is dangling to somewhere in the middle of this ice fall. Because this is the part where you go up the ladders and you come back over the rope, actually. So this is a part of the Khumbu ice fall itself, and you can see how it is, and this is right in the beginning of the climb. You're not even getting accustomed to, like, you just came back with a little holiday trek up to base camp, and then this one in the next 6 hours. This is the last lesson, and this got added a little bit later after my talks began to happen, and people were like, what's your message to the youngsters? What's your message to this one and that one? So I added this one, and there was a very specific context because of which I added. As I told you, there is a fixed amount of oxygen every climber has on Everest. Okay, so when you leave, even if you were carrying extra up to Camp 4, when you leave for that night, you have 3 tanks. One is on your body, and 2, fortunately, your Sherpa is able to take for you. So within those 3 tanks, you got to be able to finish the job and come back to Camp 4. There is no negotiation, no explanation, no second chances, nothing. It's between you and the mountain. Either you do your job or it's consequential discipline, as I call it. And sometimes this whole expedition, which is only about 7 weeks long, I realize that it gives you a helicopter view of your life, which can otherwise be over 3 or 4 decades. But on a day-to-day basis, we don't realize the importance of that every piece of time. But it's the most non-negotiable resource, right? So we need to keep going at each camp before oxygen runs out. In life, the clock is ticking regardless of what we are doing. Time in life is like oxygen on Everest. We have a fixed amount and it keeps moving even if we are not. If we are not back to Camp 4, we are resting too much or all the time getting scared or whatever. Even if you are resting, the oxygen is flowing through the tank. And there is a finite amount of it. And no amount of money, no amount of nothing can help. It's over. It's the last part. Every other resource doesn't matter except what you have in the top floor of your body. So this was the most important one. And that would be the last slide to push. These are some important quotes from important people. To push oneself within the wisp of death and return to the valley in the world below is to see life in its raw immediacy. And the last one, I think, is the most important one, finally. Usually we think that brave people have no fear. The truth is that they are intimate with fear. Thank you, guys.